Canine Longevity is presented by Myos Pet, the leaders in pet muscle health.
I am so honored to have one of the guests of all time, all things mobility and motion and rehabilitation theory, Dr. Lloyd McCauley. All right, so Dr. McCauley, recently you were at VMX, one of the amazing speakers that I did unfortunately not have a chance to capture. So I'm excited to hear about this, but there's something called the missing link that I missed. The missing link. Can you tell me, give me a little bit of backstory and then fill me in on what I missed down at VMX, because I heard it was incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I do love lecturing. I do love teaching. We were talking about muscle as a missing link. So there's actually something called the muscle mass index in humans, where they do a DEXA scan and they look at your total lean muscle mass, divide it by the square of your height, and they can give you a really good idea of how long you're going to live.
Wow.
It's a correlation that it doesn't matter what your cardiovascular health is, your metabolic health, in itself gives you an idea of your longevity, right? So why would we think that we can't do that with dogs, right? Building muscle, if you think about it, except for the brain, the muscle uses the most glucose. So the more muscle you have, the faster you can burn fat, right? That's why human athletes can eat 12,000 calories in a day and gain zero fat because they have so much muscle that's using that, right? So it helps with that. We talked before about Peter Attia, right? The 4 horsemen of death, right? It's cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, neoplasia, and metabolic disease. Exercise and building muscle helps with all of those. Right? So increasing health span, increasing lifespan, building muscle is super, super important.
Yeah, I think Peter Attia and others have said right up there at the very top of longevity of exercise and sleep.
Yes.
And that's something we don't think about, cognitive health for our canine athletes or canine companions. And that leads into the whole gut health, the gut being one of the most important organs in the body, and not only important for cardiovascular disease, but what's going on up here as well. So it's another fascinating thing we'll talk about. When it comes then to muscle health, as we're talking about now, and muscle being so important for mobility, what are some things that you recommend then to your patients, or when you're lecturing, worldwide, that you say this is a good way to try to maintain muscle mass? Because we know for us as we get older, all the data shown, boy, when we fall and break our hip and we lose, and you have sarcopenia, we lose that muscle mass, that's it. We're on this trajectory down. And so the most important thing that you and I can do is keep that muscle mass, build that muscle mass, maintain it. And what can you do for canine patients, though? So what can we do for dogs to try to gain or maintain, especially as we start to get into our senior years? How do you counsel people, and how do you counsel other veterinarians that are saying, I'm not really sure what to tell these owners? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, you used a magic word that I want to explain: sarcopenia, sarcomusclepenia small, right? So it's a normal aging change that we can affect. So in dogs and humans, as you age, lean muscle turns first to fat and then to scar tissue. So as you age, you may not lose circumference, but the amount of muscle in there decreases, so you lose strength. And then as you continue to age, that turns into fibrous tissue, and that's where you have that decrease in circumference and more decrease in strength. And it can be a double whammy. So we know there's 2 types of muscle fibers, right? Type 1 and type 2. And there's some variations within there, but in general, type 1 is our endurance exercising muscle, right? So that's our postural muscle. It's our marathon runners, right? They're lean muscle, but they can go forever. Type 2 muscle fibers are what we hypertrophy or get bigger, and that's our strength. So those fibers are the ones that have a lot of power, but they fatigue quickly. And all of our muscles have a balance of those two. Just by aging, we lose 25% of our type 2 muscle fibers, just by aging. right?
Yeah.
Our type 1 muscle fibers can compensate for that. But the way we lose our type 1 muscle fibers is disuse atrophy. So if your dog is getting older and they're laying around, that's your double whammy. So we want to do the exercises, both strengthening so that we have more to work with, our type 2, and our endurance, walk, run, swim, to build our type 1 so that we have the best amount of muscle going in. And there's research in humans and animals that show that you can continue to build brain cells like our neurons, as well as our muscle fibers, literally until the day you die. So there's no like, oh, he's old, I'm just going to give up. It's let's start now.
And I think the other impact is that as they lose muscle and they lose motion, mobility, they gain weight. And so now lost the muscle and all that excessive weight on the joints, which we know they may be getting arthritis throughout life over the years, especially if they had a previous injury. It's that perfect circle, it's a spiral. And the challenge though, and I don't know if you've run into this, is that when you have an owner who really wants to do everything they can for their dog, but translationally, that One Health medicine, you're looking at the owner saying, walk your dog more. We got to get your dog out there. And if we think about the translational effect, it means they got to get out there. So it's going to be healthier for them as well. So even though we're counseling them as to, listen, we're trying to prevent this word everyone's learning now, sarcopenia. Hey, we're actually doing it for the owner as well, or the handler as well. So is there too much walking that they can have? People say to me, how much can I walk my dog? Can I overwalk my dog? And if you tell them, especially the sporting dog owners, if you say do this 5 times, they're going to do it 5,100 times. We know that because 5,100 has to be better than 5. But for our average companion, what are we telling the pet parent? How often can they walk? And of course, it's going to differ for a Chihuahua versus an English Bulldog who will go from here to the door and back again. But as they age, if the dog wants to still walk, is it okay to keep that dog walking with the owner and let the dog dictate how far it wants to walk?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, that goes back to the very beginning of baby puppyhood, right? Communicate. Yeah. So if the dog says, I'm tired, right? You don't want them to become lame. You don't want them to have to lay down to say, I'm not doing it anymore. It hurts, right? Because then you're a mile from home.
Yeah.
Right? So if they can communicate, hey, you know what? Like I took my dog out last night and I worked all day and it was getting dark and we went down to the end of the road and back and he had the choice of turn into the driveway or keep going. And he turned into the driveway. He's like, Mom, it's really cold out here. I think I want to go in. Okay. Now I still get to make the choice. I can say, no, we're going to get your butt moving, or I can listen to him, but at least we have a way to communicate.
Yeah.
Right. And so back to your question of how far do you go? It's like if I take someone off the street and I don't know what their history is, if I say run a mile, they may be able to run a house in the suburb and be like, right? Or they may be a marathon runner and be like, this is nothing. You need to meet them where they're at and then slowly build them further, right? And then take them. And if the dog is stiff and sore the next day, you've overdone it, right? Read your dog's sign, read their body language to know, are they looking for more? And like you said, like those border collies or those labs that will play ball until they drop, literally, you need to actually hold them back a little bit, like your agility owners, right? Hold them back a little bit and give them boundaries. Really funny story. I had a client when I was in Chicago where I said, I want you to walk your dog, like 3 to 5 minutes. And she flipped out on me and said, what? Are you kidding? 3 to 5 minutes? 5 minutes is almost twice as much as 3 minutes. How much do you want me to? And I literally had to say, okay, you are going to take out your timer on your phone and you're going to put in 2 minutes. And when that dings, you have to turn around and come back. And you are allowed to add 30 seconds a day until you're up to 10 minutes. And then we're going to go a minute a day, right? So there's some clients who need very strict boundaries and some clients you can say, ask your dog. Your dog is really smart, right? And you guys have a good relationship to communicate. So I would love to say, you can walk your dog a mile, but it depends. Like you said, the bulldog, a mile may be really long. And a border collie, they're going to be like, this is the warm up. Now what?
What else you got?
Yeah.
So when we talk about muscle mobility, and we were just talking about strength, and even for us as humans, does walking cut it? Or, we know that strength training is so important, and we all walk. We walk
Right.
from here to go to our cappuccino. And well, the problem is we may not even walk to go get our cappuccino. We may jump in our car, drive to Starbucks, get a little, cup and drive home, where we should have been walking. But walking, at least from the data I've seen in the human side, isn't quite enough. We really need some sort of strength training and to really show the best effect on longevity. What do you think for our patients, for dogs, whether you're a companion or even a canine athlete, what should these owners be thinking about as far as strength? Because walking, we all walk, but what can these owners do at home? What can these owners do at home to help with strength? Is there, like, do they get the barbells out, and do they, there's
Yeah.
exercise bars for dogs I see, and all these BOSUs and things that they can do. What is your take on that? Should the pet parent be thinking about strength training as well throughout the years? And then can you give some examples of what they can do at home?
Absolutely. So yes, so we talked a little bit about Huberman and Peter Attia.
Yeah.
Peter Attia from the research has pulled that you need three different kinds of exercise. You need proprioception and balance, you need endurance, and you need strength training for the best longevity. And I truly believe that's the same for our dogs. So you're walking your dog, that is your endurance exercise. That's it. You need the others. So things like cavaletti poles or pickup sticks or things where they're, or just taking your dog on a hike where it's uneven terrain can be good for balance and proprioception. For strength training, I start with like backwards walking, sideways walking. I introduced you to Sid, my guy, who's curled up next to me. He's a ninja, right? So we talked about how he's one of the few dogs in the world that can take a round ball, jump on it by itself, go forwards, backwards, sideways, spin and twirl with nobody touching it. So I have him doing things like bag, stand, bag, right? Because that's added body weight to his back end. And please do not try this at home. But he can do 60 to 80 of those in a row, right?
Wow.
Right. But I had to work him up, right? Same thing with the ball. It's not like I could say, get on the ball. It took 2 years of slowly building him up. And then I have exercises to work the front end as well. It literally starts with just a play bow, right? Just like a push-up. And then you build and build and build and build until they're athlete, ninja, whatever you want to call it. And it's because I love my dog. So can I tell you his story?
Yeah, please.
So
Yes.
I got Sid. I went to the Humane Society. I like to rescue dogs. I had an old dog, Fritz, and I was looking for a companion. And they had a 12-year-old English setter, and I couldn't get him the day I went. I was on my way to a conference. I'm like, on the way back, I'll get him. Came back and he was gone. And there was this little black dog that was screaming as he's running back and forth. And I laughingly said, that's my kind of dog. Well, needless to say, I came home with him and I looked at him and I'm like, thank God I'm a rehab vet because he has straight knees, straight shoulders, and a long back. And I'm like, I am a rehab vet. You are not going to tear your cruciate. You are not going to hurt your shoulders. You are not going to have a back injury or psoas injury because he runs, right? He's I guess a Feist or Carolina Mountain Dog. We're guessing. I didn't do the DNA test. And I'm like, okay, we put together an exercise program for him. And like I said, I have literally taken him to the point that he can walk on a round ball.
Wow.
I took my exercise program and I sent it out to some of my friends. One of them being Laura in Chicago, and she had her at the time 9-year-old competitive agility dog. And I'm like, okay, here it is. And she's the one who said make a exercise course out of it because she's like, oh my God, Lori, I thought my dogs were conditioned. She does herding,
Yeah.
obedience. She does the agility, right? She's all around. And she's like, I had no idea what my dog's potential was. At age 11, Sophia was the 7th fastest Sheltie in bad dog agility,
Oh, wow.
right? Everyone else was 4, 5, and 6, and she was 11, right? Because by doing the exercises and strengthening the muscle and preventing the injuries, there's so much you can do. Yeah. So that's his, right?
Wow.
And he's still at the point where I continue to challenge him and he continues to show me what he can do and add on to.
So resources, because those listening would say, oh, I need to do something more than just walk my dog. I thought walking my dog was strength training and doing enough. Where do they go to YouTube and just type in exercises for dogs? Do they, how do they even find the next step for those that say, I want to step it up. I want to do some proprioceptive work with my dog. I want to do some strength training with my dog. Where can they find those resources? And there's so much you can find online that you follow and these podcasts. You're like, oh, should I really be doing this? Is this safe? Or, we just go down these rabbit holes. What do you recommend? What's going to be the most beneficial for owners, really data driven and a source that's safe for them to go to learn some things they can do, some of these exercises, proprioception or strength training for their dog? Where do they go?
So on Optimum Pet Vitality, so that's my company.
Okay.
We have core and more foundational exercises for your dogs. And that is the 24 exercises that I recommend for all pets, for all dogs, right? Because, and it's not like, here's 24 exercises, because that's overwhelming. It is literally, let's learn about the dog and we'll start you with 4 exercises. And then every 2 weeks you get access to more. So you can always go back and watch them. And it's not just, this is a dog doing it right. It is. This is how to do it. This is your biomechanics, what you need to do. This is how the dog's going to cheat. This is how outthink the dog, right? Because they always want to do it the easy way, right? And it's not that they're trying to be bad dogs. Just like humans, they want the reward with the least amount of work possible. And we want the owners, again, to have the knowledge to know what is overheating, what is fatigue, how is my dog going to cheat? How do I outthink them? What are the red flags? Oh my God, my dog did blank. I need to stop what I'm doing and take him to the vet. And all of those things together are in that one course. Yeah.
And they can find that how? Online? Or?
Yep. So it's all online. It's optimumpetvitality.com.
Perfect.
And that course is core and more foundational exercises for your dog.
Canine Longevity is presented by Myos Pet, the leaders in pet muscle health.
As dogs age, muscle loss can quietly steal mobility and quality of life. But what if science could help change that? Myos Muscle Formula with Fortitropin is an all-natural science-backed ingredient shown to help build and maintain muscle while reducing muscle breakdown with over a decade of research and real results. Because stronger muscles means more moments together. Myos, more time together.
Thank you. So we're walking, we're doing some proprioceptive work. We are now in our strength training regime. What about supplements? If you and I, Huberman and Puritia and all these people that bring these bucketfuls of supplements. So I'm like, well, maybe I need 3 more of these. And the creatine, do I do 5 grams or do I do 20 grams? And it's like, oh my Lord. Right. So I see owners that come in and they want to do everything right for their dog. And they're carrying a grocery bag full of supplements. And sometimes it's the same supplement, but they don't realize this because it's just 2 different names. Boy, we could do a whole nother episode on just supplements, and we probably should. But since we're talking about muscle and motion, particular supplements that you recommend when we're talking about muscle, ones that we could potentially use to maintain, or if there's injury or we're starting to lose muscle over time. What's your gut? What's your feeling on, supplements as far as when it comes to muscle?
Absolutely. The one I adore, I've been on and have my dogs on for years, is Myos. Myos is Fortitropin. It is derived from fertilized chicken eggs. It goes through 3 different processes, so it makes it bioavailable for both animals and humans. So there's research in horses, cats, dogs, humans, that it builds muscle. So it builds muscle even without exercise. Now, I'm not saying don't exercise.
Yeah.
But in the research, even without exercise, it builds muscle. It increases mobility. So they have, and all of their studies are done really well. So double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. And they had one where cheese or Myos. And the dogs that were on the Myos with nothing else had significantly more mobility after like 12 weeks, right? They have studies that show that cats with kidney disease, right? When we look at kidney disease, the cats get smaller and smaller and smaller because they can't handle the protein. They lose the protein and then they die. And literally in 6 weeks, they had 70% of the cats increase by an average of 2 pounds. So that's like a 6-pound cat going to an 8-pound cat, or an 8-pound cat going to a 10-pound cat, right? That's huge for longevity for the cats. inactivity or injury. There was a great study. What turned me on to Myos was a study that looked at TPLO. So 100 dogs had a TPLO, so for a cruciate injury. And the dogs that were on the cheese, 6-8 weeks out, they had significant atrophy, which is what you would expect. And their myostatin, a chemical that's released in the body, myomuscle statin stop.
Mhm.
So when you're injured as you get older, if you, let's see, inactivity is the other one, or kidney disease, myostatin increases, so you lose muscle. So the myostatin increased, the muscle decreased. And the dogs that were actually on the myos, they didn't lose muscle and their myostatin didn't. So I heard this research and I'm like, if this is real, this is really cool. And if it's not, I want to know about it. And I hope the company forgives me, but I will tell the story. I literally called the company and said, listen, I lecture nationally and internationally. If what you have is real, I want to know about it and I want to teach people about it. And I promise you, if it's not real, I won't tell anybody. But if you send me, I have at the time a 12-year-old Mastiff, right? And I do exercises, obviously, with my dogs every single day, twice a day, because I'm a little anal retentive. But I'm like, I know exactly what my dogs can do. If it changes, I will let people know about it. And they sent me a 12-week supply. And I literally have videos. Beforehand, Ollie was able to sit up and bag because I think that's really good for trunk as long as their back is straight.
Yeah.
And he would fall over. So I was literally having to hold his paw and we would alternate paws. After 12 weeks, not only could he sit up and bag, but he was up to 12 high fives, which is changing his center of gravity.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is amazing. And my 98-pound Mastiff passed when he was 14. And like I had a conversation with another DACVSMR, so another board certified rehab vet, and she was talking about how she has her patients, go backwards 3 reps of 10 feet. And I'm like, 30 feet? Are you kidding me? So I shot a video of Ollie walking backwards 120 feet straight, right? Because that's as long as I could on my yard. I would have hit the tree. No problems at all at 12. So yeah, so I am a huge believer in it. Like you said, they're a human product, yoked. I'm on it because I'm almost 60, right? And we know that with sarcopenia, we are just as much at risk of losing muscle, or we do lose muscle. So anything we can do to stop that is beneficial.
So my question and I'm on it as well. My question for you, though, I've had owners ask this, and it would be great if you could explain to the viewers. They say, well, I give my dog eggs. I give my dog salmon. A lot of people feed raw or prepare their dog's food. Boy, nutrition will be a whole other podcast that we'll do because, boy, talk about going down a rabbit hole. But I've had them say, well, I heard about myos, but instead I just give my dog eggs. Explain to the viewers, if you don't mind, we can geek out a little bit on the biochemistry here. But why just giving some eggs doesn't cut it? What is it about the myos? Can they eat enough eggs? It's like almost saying, well, I eat a few salmon, does that mean I'm getting all the fish oil I need in omega-3s? But with the eggs, explain to people kind of the process of why this concentrate or how it works as far as, just giving your dog an egg or two isn't going to be the same thing as having the actual concentrate. Can you kind of explain that to people if you don't mind?
Well, I can tell you what I know. So what I know is I've read the research on the decreasing myostatin in fertilized versus non-fertilized eggs. And fertilized eggs was significantly higher than non-fertilized eggs. I also know that there is 3 different processes. So literally the company has to take the eggs, and it's just the egg yolks, and they have one process. And then they have to change plants and go to another location to have the second process, and then change plants to go to another place. So they would not be having that expense if it was just feeding an egg. And it's those 3 processes that have been shown, that final product, that's why they call it phototropin and not just like egg yolks, right?
Right.
That shows that it has the bioavailability to have that reaction in the body.
That's brilliant. Do they have to worry about cholesterol? We all worry about, cholesterol, back to that longevity and statins or not. And so do we have to worry about, the cholesterol and the level of concentrate that we have with this product?
That one I can't answer for you. I don't know. I don't know that we check cholesterol on most dogs or pets.
Yeah. I don't know either. That's why I was asking it. And it's okay for us to say, I don't know, but back to the podcast that you and I would listen to on the human side, is it really dietary cholesterol that we have to worry about? Or is it the saturated fat that we get from fast food?
Right. True.
I
True.
think, all the studies now are showing eggs are actually one of the most viable, important proteins of all the proteins we can have, because it has all the amino acids. Every single amino acid we need is in the eggs. And we're learning more and more and more that it doesn't actually affect our overall cholesterol. It's actually really helpful for everything from hormones, cognitive function, and so forth. We actually kind of need cholesterol.
Well, and our body makes cholesterol if we don't have enough.
And so that's why I think, some of my clients were like, oh, I'm worried about my dog's cholesterol with something that's so concentrated. I'm like, it's not usually dietary cholesterol anymore. We've proven now in the science that actually affects the negative effects that we see with cholesterol. It's the saturated fats and things like that. But this is fantastic. So how do people find Myos? Is this something they have to get from their veterinarian's office? Is this something they can get online? Is there a difference in Myos formulations?
So there are multiple. Obviously, there is a horse formulation, there is a cat formulation, there is a dog formulation. So they can go to MYOS, which is myos.com.
Okay.
They can get it through their vets. So through their vets, they have, and again, this goes into the nutrition stuff, right? A vet strength, which not only has the fortotropin in it from the egg yolks, but it has 3 branched chain amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, which are the 3 amino acids that have also been shown to increase muscle. And then if you're like, oh, but I'm worried about my dog's joints as well, they have the fortotropin, so the Myos with green lip muscle. So when we look, again, meta-analysis, looking at many studies of glucosamine and chondroitin versus like perna muscles or green lip muscles,
Right.
they have a much more significant effect if you use the perna muscles or green lip muscles over the isolated glucosamine and chondroitin. So Myos has the Myos with green lip muscles.
Yeah. Perfect. And then for us on the human side, it's yolk.
Yolked. YOLKED, like an egg yolk. Yep.
Egg
And
yolk.
I don't know about you, but I can like just, right, instead of mix. And again, if I'm having a smoothie, I always put it into my smoothie. Actually, to tell you the truth, because my dogs are on the Myos, if I'm having a smoothie, I take the Myos myself. So 2 scoops is the human dose.
Mhm.
And if I'm not having a smoothie in the morning, I will just take the yolk and just put it in my mouth because it tastes like a vanilla cupcake. Have you had
Yeah.
that experience?
Well, I wouldn't say vanilla cupcake. I wish I could say that. What I will say to those listening is that everyone has their palate, and it does smell like eggs. Yeah, it does smell like eggs. And so I have found that I do have to, when I put it in my smoothie, add a whole bunch of other things in there to kind of make it a little bit less like one of those egg cupcakes you were just mentioning. But it is fascinating the difference that you'll see when you're on these products, both I think from a human standpoint, but also from our patients. And for me, where I'm using it is not only for dogs that are getting older and I'm trying to maintain or increase if I can. I like them on it if they have an injury, because we know that post-operatively, whether you've had just a routine elbow scope for elbow dysplasia, or you had that knee injury and you just had your knee surgery, or sporting dogs I see with the shoulders, they're going to lose some muscle mass, right? Because we're somewhat restricting them. Now they shouldn't be in a cage; they should be in formal rehab, 1,000% to try to maintain as well. But they are, because of post-injury, going to have some degree of muscle loss. So I want those dogs to maintain. And then for the sporting dogs, boy, I want them as maintained or actively building if they can, to keep them as fit and competitive as we can. So I think, whether you're dealing with geriatrics, companions, post injury, or athletics, there is a reason for dogs to be on this supplement. And I'm always skeptic when it comes to all the supplements that are out there, and I look for data. They have data on the human side and on the veterinary side. So, full disclosure, not a paid consultant by the company, but I do believe very much in their science and also their product.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will even say for the dogs that are just inactive, right? The fact that there's research that shows that it makes them more active That's quality of life to me, right? Motion is lotion, right? We want them to move as much as possible so that we have motion in the joints, so they don't have the arthritis, so that we have the stretch of the fascia, that we have the contraction of the muscle. So any dog, to me, supplement wise, if they hit middle age, so if you expect your dog to live to be 10, by 5, we want to be putting them on supplements. We call geriatric when they hit 75% of their life. So to me, we want to be taking care of the joints and muscle before we hit the point that we have problems because we've lost so much.
No, that's a brilliant point. And so my question, because this is a great one that comes up, when can they then start their product? When can they start Myos? If you are pet parent with a companion that's going hiking with you, are you saying 5 years of age for the average type dog versus the sporting dog who are really trying to keep lean and muscle? Would you also say 5 years of age for them as well? What's your recommendation?
So for my sporting dogs, by 2. I usually put them on joint supplements, especially if it's my baby world team dog.
Yep.
Why wait until there is major damage, right? For those guys, I start joint supplements at 1 and muscle supplements at 2, because that's when they're going to start competing and be pushing it. And then for my companion dogs, half-life, right? So if you have a Chihuahua, it may be 7 or 8. For a lab, it's going to be 5.
It's all about preventative medicine, healthcare. I call it medicine 3.0 versus 2.0. And
Hey.
you look at the study, boy, we published back in 1999. Don't tell anybody how old I am, but 1999, we looked at could we protect joints, prior to joint insult. And so the whole idea was give them supplements before they have an injury. And we're like, is there some science or data behind that? So we had that group of dogs that we placed on, a product, a supplement prior to any kind of joint, inflammation. And then we had dogs that after they had joint inflammation went on products. And we looked objectively using nuclear scintigraphy, objective gait analysis. And what we found is that dogs were on supplements prior to the joint injury had significantly less lameness, significantly less joint inflammation objectively than those that started after. So I totally agree with you. The sporting dogs, those little joints are starting to get some wear and tear. I know their growth plates are closed. They're starting to work it. I want them protected. And so that is. I'm glad we share the same tie line. I think I feel like now we're doing. I know from the teacher that we're preaching the right message. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
This segment of Canine Longevity is brought to you by Equiseer for Dogs, combining light therapy, infrared, and neurostimulation to help support canine comfort and movement.
So, Dr. McCulley, we have underwater treadmill, which you were the pioneer. There's a lot of other modalities that since that time have come about as well. We have, what we call photobiomodulation or laser therapy. We have shockwave therapy, all these different electromagnetic field therapies and beds and things that people, buy online and bring into my office. I'm like, oh my Lord, I've never even heard of this one. I better go, investigate. What is your take? And help me a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about in a formal rehab setting versus at home. Can you just give the listener a little bit of appreciation as to what modalities are out there that are available at a local rehab center, places they would go and when you're going to their home, even for the house calls, versus some of the modalities that actually owners can look to get for at home for their dog's body, health, overall maintenance as well. So start, if you wouldn't mind, with formal rehab and those modalities, and then we can talk a little bit about home rehab.
Yeah, so we covered underwater treadmill. Like you said, laser is huge. And in my honest opinion is if you have a class 4 laser, that should only be done by a veterinary professional, right? There's just too much chance for damage if not used appropriately. Not that it's bad. To me, it's like a scalpel. In the right hands, it's a magic tool. And in the wrong hands, it's dangerous. Class 3 lasers, if people are comfortable with it and educated on how to use it, 70% or more of my clients have at-home lasers. And actually, we designed an at-home laser therapy, another one of our courses, because 70% of my clients had lasers and had zero knowledge on how to use it on their dogs. And let's be real, when people get them, they use it on themselves as well. right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we designed the at-home laser therapy course so that people would know how to treat their dogs, because body positioning and probe positioning is the difference between it working and it not working. Or it works a little bit and oh my God, it's amazing. So laser's a huge one. Like you said, PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic field therapy. I did the original clinical research on the Assisi loop like 6 owners of the company ago, right? 20 something years ago, where they came to me and said, can you tell us how it works on dogs? And I said, no, I'm not taking my patients and making them guinea pigs, but I'll do that to my family, my staff, all of that. And we figured out how it would work. That was when it was a Vivi, even before Assisi, on
Yeah.
humans, and then said, okay, now let's try it on the dogs. And when it works for this, it doesn't work for that. And since then, I mean, it is amazing, right? So, and there's tons of studies that PEMF can help with decreasing inflammation, speeding healing, and it can be done at home, right? So I usually tell people when I talk to the professionals, do your laser at the clinic, send them home with an Assisi loop, right? And you can either have an Assisi loop or both Assisi and Respond have beds. So, a loop is amazing. And if your dog has polyarthritis or they have arthritis in their hips and their knees and their elbows and their wrists and their neck, you can't put a loop everywhere, right?
No.
But you can lay them on a bed. I will be 100% honest because I've done this research and I've been working with them for 20 years. The loops are better than the beds. At least the Assisi loop is better to me than the Assisi bed and the Respond bed. I know there's other things out there, because you can literally put it over. So we talk about like if you have like a corgi has a back issue, they wear it like a hula hoop and it goes up and down the spine, right? If you have a dog that has a knee issue, you can put it right around their knee and it has the research. It's targeted PEMF, which means that you can use that for 15 minutes, 2 to 4 times a day. And in the research, it was done twice a day compared to non-targeted that you need like 12 hours a day to have
Wow.
equal or actually less effect, right? And that's straight from the research. So I love PEMF. I think it's an amazing tool. I know a ton of clinicians who have like the Respond bed at their clinic and they work on the dogs on the floor there, and then they go home and they do other stuff, right?
Yeah.
So
Can you
that's,
explain a little bit?
yeah.
So, for those listening that don't understand how it works, and we don't have to get super down in the weeds, but just kind of a 30,000-foot view of that technology, and really kind of what is it doing? Why would an owner want to purchase one of these, and what's it actually doing for the dog? And we'll say arthritis, that because unfortunately arthritis is very common. Boy elbow dysplasia, the most common cause of limping in the front leg in most dogs that we see. So you have that dog that has elbow dysplasia. What's it doing to the body? Can you explain a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm going to throw into the weeds for just a little bit to let your listeners know that the weeds are known. So we know that it increases calcium and calmodulin binding, which increases endothelial nitric oxide synthetase, which increases short bursts of nitrous oxide, which then releases vascular endothelial growth factor. So it's going to increase blood vessels to the area. Fibroblast growth factor, so that it increases fibroblasts or cells that are going to heal things to the area. Transforming growth factor. So again, chemicals that or cytokines that are being released, molecules into the area that is going to help with healing. So we have more blood flow, more blood vessels, cells that are pulled into the area for healing. There was an amazing research article using the Assisi loop where they said, okay, these dogs have arthritis. Half of them we're going to give Previcox. Half of them we're going to do the Assisi loop, and we're going to do it for 3 weeks. And what they found was, and it was twice a day, 15 minutes. Both of them had great results, but then they took it away. And what they found was within 7 to 10 days, the dogs that were on the NSAIDs started to have problems again. And the dogs that had the Assisi loops were still significantly improved 4 and 12 months later.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's not just hiding or getting rid of the inflammation, it's literally healing the tissue. There was a research article in it was at the VA hospital. So for humans, right? Because Assisi had a Vivi, which is a human product. They're both FDA cleared for humans, where they took people, VA people, who had non-healing wounds. They hadn't changed in at least 3 months. They were not able to heal. And the people that had the double-blind placebo-controlled study, so that had the fake, actually was the same or maybe even a little bit worse. And the people that had the active loops had, it was like 68% healing. Huge, huge. So again, really good company, really good research, really good product.
Down in the weeds one more time, if you don't mind, because this is fascinating for me and for the viewer. Laser,
Yes.
like photobiomodulation. I have a lot of clients that will come in and they'll have, a laser pointer, like you and I will use on podium, or they'll have, I mean, there's so many different types of lasers out there, and they're bringing them in, right? And we talk about that class 3B you were just mentioning. Can you explain a little bit, again, we don't have to go super down in the weeds, but what you just said was perfect. So we can go that deep if you like. The difference in the different types of power or wattage, just explain a little bit about that so people understand, all the way from that laser pointer that unfortunately probably isn't going to do a whole lot for that arthritis in the elbow we were just talking about, all the way up to that class 4 that we really don't recommend that a user, try at home. Definitely, a veterinary professional, boarded sports medicine doctor or certified rehab therapist. Can you walk us through that path and kind of explain to people why maybe that laser pointer that we use lecturing may not work as well as the class 3B?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we really need to start when we look at the research at what the wavelength, and I think so many people miss that, right? So the wavelength of the laser is super important. So if you have a wavelength in the 970 to 980 nanometers, it's absorbed by water. So to get depth of penetration, you need a lot of energy. So there was great research done by Jan Huntingford and was it Leilani? No, it wasn't, but on elbow arthritis. And they said, okay, from the research, we're going to say that if we use 4 joules per centimeter squared, it should help. It didn't help. Let's use 8. That didn't help. They went up to, for a large dog, 19 joules per centimeter squared, and it was amazing. But it's that wavelength. If you take something in the 800 or the 904, 905, you will burn that dog with that amount of energy. It's not that one is good and one is bad. It's you need to have the right amount for the right tool. It's like saying, I'm not going to give you 500 milligrams of amoxicillin versus 500 milligrams of some other antibiotic, right? You need to have the right dose for each wavelength. So you've got your 970, 980. Those are the ones that are heating that you see people moving. Then you have your class 3B lasers, like Respond and SpectraVet, Avant. All of those guys are really good, but you don't need as much energy. So you can get 4 to 5 joules per centimeter squared, have amazing results because you're going to have more penetration because you're not absorbed by the water. And then we want to go into the red, which is amazing for skin, right? It is better than any of the other ones for skin. Yeah, your laser pointer, not really going to help, but having bigger diodes, that, right? The red is the best thing you can do for skin. And when we look at red, there's also blue, right? To go to one more wavelength. Blue is great for some infections, so it can help with some things. Dentistry, when I get my teeth cleaned, they use a blue light when they're done, and it kills a whole bunch of the bacteria, right? It's amazing for MRSA, which is what humans get. It does very little for MRSIP, which is the resistant infections that dogs get, right? So you have to realize that they each have their own place. So yeah, your laser pointer doesn't have the power or the size to do something. If you're like, hey, I want to do one acupuncture point and I have lots of time, absolutely go for it. Right? It's not going to have the penetration, but it can stimulate an acupuncture point. Red can do amazing things for skin, and it's going to have a little bit of penetration, so it's going to get that sore muscle that may decrease soreness, right? So the analogy would be it's like antibiotics. They each have their own specialty.
Total sense. So we're back to that elbow dysplasia, where companion dogs, elbow arthritis. now the clients come to you and you're doing rehab and they're saying, yep, we're going to take your course. We're going to learn where is the elbow even, or sometimes they're here and they think it's there. And okay, we finally know where the anatomy is and they have their 3B. How often should they use that at home? Is it daily? Is it once a week? What's your recommendation as far as how often these owners should be treating that, elbow arthritis?
Again, it depends upon what unit they're using. So like if you have something like a low powered unit,
Mm-hmm.
So we have our red light units, you have like your multi-radiance, those can be used twice a day, right? If you have a higher power unit, you might want to go to once a day. And it depends upon what you're treating. If I have a dog, I'm going to step back for a second, right? Because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
We know from the research that if you blast that tissue with energy, you are literally stopping this, go from cell to mitochondria. The mitochondria is what makes the ATP, which is like the gas for the cell to be able to do what it needs to do. Right. If we put a lot of power in there, we are shutting that mitochondria down. We decrease cell respiration. And you go, oh my God, that would be horrible. Except if you're painful, it's doing that to the nerves. So you significantly decrease pain. We call it an axonal, so the axon nerve block, right? If we want healing, we're going to use significantly less energy. And that revs up that mitochondria to make more ATP to do whatever it needs to do for the cell, right? So my son, again, legally we're allowed to treat family, right? Both when he had his tonsils out and when he had all 4 wisdom teeth out, I brought the laser home. I treated him twice a day because I wanted to knock that pain out. Yeah. And he's a boy, right? So by day 3, he was like, after his wisdom teeth, he was doing bridge jumping into dirty water. I'm like, what are you thinking? He's like, I feel great, Mom. I haven't needed pain meds at all. Right? Right? If you have a dog that has arthritis, we don't need to pound that. We want to work on healing. So my recommendation there would be like once a day if you can, right? If you're going to the vet, it may be once or twice a week because that's what you can do. If you're at home, it might be once a day for 3 days, every other day for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, depending upon how bad they are, and then spread it out. My goal is to do the least amount you need to do to have the effect you want.
That makes sense. So we talked about the use of laser therapy then for arthritis. We were talking about the elbow. Mm-hmm. How about for our sporting dogs? Is there ever a time where we're saying, okay, we know that for performance dogs, at least if we're talking about agility, the shoulder is the most common issue in the front. We know the iliopsoas is probably the most common issue that we see in the hindland, probably for your population of sporting dogs in mind. Is there ever a situation or a scenario where you feel that, hey, as a prophylactic preventative for what we call tendinopathy or tendinitis or injury to the soft tissues, that you would want them to use a class 3B laser for the shoulder or for the ilio? And if so, when should they use it? Do they use it before they do some training? Do they use it at the end of the day? Can you give me a little guidance there? Because I do know, like you, clients come in and they have their laser, they have their bag of supplements in this hand, they have their laser class 3B. They want to do what's right for their dog. Absolutely. But what can you do to guide them as far as, hey, I have a happy, healthy border collie that wants to be world team, and I'm trying to really protect this shoulder and really protect that psoas. I mean, we want to protect the whole body, but knowing that the shoulder and the psoas are 2 areas that just get kind of worked with that particular sport, what can you say? Do you have any guidance for those owners? Should they be doing this? Is there no data in it? Are we crazy? Because it seems to make sense to me, and there is some data in the human world, but tell me what you tell your sporting dog owners.
What do I tell them? I tell them absolutely laser. So they can laser preventatively. And yes, there's definitely research. So there's research that shows that if you laser before and after an activity, and this was research done in humans, it increased the ability to build strength. Right? If you do it before an activity, and they did this in competitive soccer players, what would happen is in general, and it was a double-blind placebo, so the coach didn't know who had the actual laser and who had the fake laser. And when the players got physically fatigued, he would call them out and put somebody in. And they found that the people who actually had the actual laser got to play longer than normal than the people who didn't, right? They played their average amount of time before they get pulled in. So we know it can increase endurance, we can increase strength. We know that it can help heal micro tears, right? So when we work out really hard, we have damage to our tendons and ligaments. So yes, you can use it for that. I can tell you again from my sons, my son, my younger son came in 5th in state for
Wow.
wrestling, right? So really, really hard. And whereas the other kids were cramping up and were horribly fatigued, my son was totally relaxed. And I lasered him in between matches. And he went in feeling great. And again, N of 1, but there was a study done in humans, and this, tell me if you agree with me, this has to be college age boys, right? They took 18 to 24-year-old males, and they said they're either going to do fake laser or actual laser on their calf muscles, and they put them on a treadmill, and they said, run for as long as you can, and then we're going to biopsy you, right? That's just why I said they have to be college kids, right? And what they found was the people who had the actual laser, not only did they run significantly longer, but they had significantly less oxidative stress, so less damage to the muscle tissue, even though they ran longer than the people who didn't have the actual laser. And I've been twice, I was asked to give my professional opinion for the sled dogs on should they be allowed to laser. And I said, absolutely. If our goal is that we want these dogs to be as safe as possible, we want to do everything we can for them. And if you're like, well, this person who's racing can't afford a laser, well, that's like saying they can't race because they can't afford good dog food, right? This is or just have somebody do it and offer it to everybody, right? But why put the dogs at risk of being injured if it's something we can do that's easy, that can be preventable?
So help me understand. That is brilliant. And I want to be able to have it so it can be a takeaway for the sporting dog owners that they have their class 3B laser and they typically trial on the weekend, right? So maybe they're doing some backyard or they're seeing their trainer during the week. Should they be, when they're not training that day or not going to, even work in the backyard, should they just preventatively, prophylactically be hitting certain areas of the body? We're talking about shoulder and psoas.
Yep.
Or do you recommend just waiting until, okay, we're going in the backyard to practice, or yep, we're going to meet at the arena with our coach, do it before they go out, and at the very end, as part of that, we always talk about warm-ups and cool downs, do it part of that cool down then at the very end. Or do they just hold on until they're at that trial that weekend and then do it before they go out and run for the day, and then before they're at the end of the day when they're done and they're, packing up? Can you give a little guidance to those owners? Can they do it just daily, or wait for just the practice, or throughout the trial, before and after at the end of the day? Or even, I'll throw this out there, I know there's a lot to unpack, we can come back on it, but what about in between sessions like you did with your son? Because I get asked that too. They're like, well, wait a minute, I can do it right before we go out. Now, granted, they're running multiple dogs sometimes, so it gets a little bit crazy, but if they have the ability or the time, can they laser those two particular areas that we're worried about? They run, they come back in, they hit them again until they're going to go out later in the day. Give me some guidance, because I need your brain here, because you are the queen of laser. Help me understand so I can guide my, athletic dog, handlers, owners, on just daily versus just at time of practice. And what do we do when we're trialing? Let's see if we can unpack that.
So I would say if they're not trialing, so like your Monday through Friday, twice a week, right?
Okay.
A little bit of energy. We're just helping the muscles. We know we're going to help build the muscle, right?
Okay.
From the research, that's what they did with the people that they did the strength training with, was twice a week.
Because we know there's micro tears.
Right.
We know there's micro tears. You and I, to build, we were lifting. We want micro tears, so we have hypertrophy, right? So we know them out there running, doing the weaves, backside wraps at speed. The courses are getting faster and faster and tighter and tighter. There are micro tears. So let's try to keep those, healed to the best of their ability or functional. Okay, so twice a week for the ones that are home. Okay, now what would you recommend as far as they're going to meet with their trainer or they're practicing in the backyard? Where are they at then?
So when you say, if they're just, like say they're going to a seminar,
Yep.
beginning of the day, end of day, small amount.
Okay.
Small
Perfect.
amount.
Now
So
they're at trial.
An idea, So hold on for 1 second. To give you an idea from the research that was done with humans, now you know the size of a human versus the size of a dog. It was 510 joules per limb total. Divided over, I think it was 17 points. So small amounts of energy. And again, it was in the, if I remember correctly, it was 875 and 905, or might have been 904, but they're about the same.
Right.
So it was those wavelengths that were shown to increase the strength and endurance, but small amounts of energy.
Yeah. And now we're at a trial weekend.
Yep.
Okay, they have their dog, they have their laser. What are we recommending for a trial weekend?
Small amounts of energy, morning and night, and then during the day, check your dog. Oh my gosh, the gracilis is tight, right? He's not going to be able to bring that leg as far forward to get as many yards per second. Laser that. Just that. Oh, look, he's got a trigger point in his triceps. Laser that. Can he stretch all the way? No, he can't. He's pulling back. Get his psoas.
Yep. So do some body work, massage your dog, and this is why baseline is important.
Yep.
There may be a certain area in that dog that's always got trigger points or always is just a little tight. That's where they want to give some extra love, is to those areas as well. Yeah.
Back and neck. Don't forget back and neck. Super important.
So Dr. McCauley, you and I are into the whole entire longevity. We watched similar podcasts. You talk about Dr. Peter Attia, and he has the pillars being, everything from nutrition. We'll throw in there things like supplements. We'll talk about exercise, cognitive function, sleep, all these being important factors. When it comes to something that's equal to the dog, we'll call it the dog's pillar of health or pillar of longevity. What do you feel those pillars are? So when you're counseling that dog owner, whether they're a companion or an athlete, because I think the body is the body, what are your pillars?
So like you said, multiple types of exercise: proprioception, strengthening, endurance. That is super important. We want to get all of those. High nutrition, high quality nutrition, right? We don't want our pets to be eating McDonald's, right? Because your body just doesn't function on that. You need the right amount of nutrition so that you stay lean. So I always laugh when I lecture on obesity, because you have obesity, and then what the average vet would say is normal to me is what I call pet weight. And then you have lean, which is athlete weight. And when you look at the Purina long life study, or the life study, they showed that lean dogs lived 2 years longer. So, and that's in a lab sized dog. So we can bring that down, that if you have a small dog, if you have a Papillon, that's 3 years longer, right? So lean body mass is huge, important to me. And then supplements, right? You want to be on the right joint supplements at the right time, and the same with the muscle supplements. If you can put all of those things together, you can have a long, happy, healthy life with the least amount of injuries possible with your dog.
So Dr. McCauley, I can't thank you enough for taking this time. Again, I'm a lifelong learner. I was in the classroom so long ago learning from you. I just learned so much from you again. Can't thank you enough for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate everything. And I will see you again soon.
For those of you out there, this is Dr. Sherman Knapp with Canine Longevity, and we will have many more episodes with Dr. McCauley, because we're going to be talking about nutrition and supplements and many other things down the road. Can't wait to see what else you're bringing to the world of rehab. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good girl, Fachi.
Canine Longevity is presented by Myos Pet, the leaders in pet muscle health.